James Farr here, live from Pasadena Media Studios. Get ready for more piercing and provocative. Conversation Live starts now. And welcome to another episode of the Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. Joining me today live is filmmaker Sneed, as well as advocate Eric Johnson. We're going to have a critical and uncomfortable conversation. I want to go ahead and set up this film. We were going to be exploring solutions to exploring ways to eliminate gang violence here in the city of Pasadena. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Nipsey Hussle murder, as well as HIV, but it's not the HIV that you're thinking about. Go ahead and cue up the clip and we'll come back and join you in just a second.
Living a reckless lifestyle of violence and dysfunction, there's consequences to that. So you're going to experience incarceration, you're going to experience death, you're going to experience hardships. That's part of the lifestyle.
My uncles, my cousins, my family was banged out at an early age, man. I remember being a young kid and seeing people getting dragged out of my living room with a pistol to the brain because they wanted to make sure that they weren't snitching and giving evidence on my other family members that were still selling drugs.
You know, you were either going to be a target or you were going to hang with those that were going to protect you. And so, you know, I rode a tough bus, and so I became a Crip.
I was in a banger at first. I just wanted to work on cars, you know what I mean? But where I grew up at, guys knew I knew how to fight. So they wanted me to be from, you know, that area, and I wasn't with it. They started jumping me, start getting hit with bats and poles or whatever. So I'm like, you know what? It's time to turn up.
The way these issues are looked at is if they're a gang, and that makes them no longer a human. We dehumanize those people. They're gang members. Where they're not even people. They're people. They're people first.
And welcome back. Again, Steve, thanks so much, man. I know this film that you've done has been critically acclaimed. It's probably one of the most well-balanced films that I've seen, documentaries I've seen in a long time. And, you know, the way you presented the information, and we don't want to give up everything that's in the documentary. You also are having a screening, which is next week at the Pasadena City College in the Westerback Recital Hall. We'll make sure we get that up in the graphics as well. It's on next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. Starts at 5:30. It's kind of reception, mixer.
Yeah, let me be clear, because I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. From 5:30 to 6:15 is going to be a reception and food. Okay. But if you cannot make it, I don't want that to deter you. I still want you to come out, and the film will probably run at 6:30. Okay. So if you can get there by 6:30, get there by 6:30. We welcome you to come.
All right. Get that out the way. Now we can get into this business. Steve, does Pasadena currently have a gang violence problem?
I don't like the term problem, but there are definitely active gangs in Pasadena currently. You know what I mean? Like, I know the landscape may have changed a bit. You know, back when I was in high school, you know, you see the colors very present on people's garments and shoestrings, and in current day, it doesn't look the same. But we're still having some of those same issues. There's still violence. There's still, you know, people losing their lives, and that hurts to see, especially when you start seeing brothers that you knew, grew up with, passing away. And not only that, you start seeing the younger generation who, you know, you had a hand in as far as mentoring them, and then to see that they're dead in the street, that starts to hurt and affect you, and you want to do something about it.
Eric, same question. Does Pasadena have a problem, violence?
I agree exactly with what Steve said. In addition, I think I would add, just based on the conversations and the work that we've done, is we do have broken families, and so we do have a family problem. We have an economics problem in regards to housing and the lack of available housing, and that is going to increase tension, and that is going to increase problems. So I think we have systemic issues that are driving what we're seeing today.
Okay. And I know, Steve, when you set out to make this film, I mean, it came to you at a time where, you know, we've talked about this before. You've been a guest.
Absolutely.
And you were in a space where you wanted to actually do something.
Right.
And I know back the last flash of gang violence here in the city was somewhere between, December 2017 and January 2018, when I believe 6 people were shot and 4 people lost their lives in a feud that goes back generations. What are some of the things that you find this film is addressing to be preventative in terms of this gang violence and gang rivalries? How are you approaching it in the film?
I think the grand thing is when I thought about even doing this film, what kind of pushed was I've sat in settings with very intelligent people, and we had discussions and people had solutions, but every time I look around that room, it's like you want to connect and talk with someone or speak with someone that's been there, who's been a part of that, who's been really affected. So then when we hear from their perspectives what they deem solutions to be, I think it's very powerful, because now we got brothers from the neighborhood sharing with us what they think solutions are. And some of these brothers never really speak to people on this level to even have these type of conversations. But I thought if the youth can hear from brothers who've been there, lived it, done it, and they're speaking against it, saying, man, it's probably not worth your time, or find something positive to do, or I did it because of these things, I think they could learn something from it. And then not only that, they get to hear from other people with different perspectives. But what I like most, I'm gonna give it back to you, is that in this film, everybody got a chance to offer up a solution. I think that's powerful. I watched every documentary, especially that had anything to do with Pasadena. No documentary film has anything to do with solutions. So I feel like this is the first film pushing solutions for people to be active and have that discussion.
Now, Eric, you grew up in the home, and your father was a police officer.
Yes.
You're a pastor.
Yes.
But somewhere in between that space, you became a Crip.
Yes.
How did that happen?
That happened because I needed protection. My own father was a violent and abusive man. And I was a small guy. In 9th grade, I was 66 pounds. So I was not only a target at home, I was a target as soon as I stepped outside of the house. And so I needed protection. And that's pretty much the transition. I think one of the things that was driving it was to piss off my dad. But the other part of it was that my life was never safe, and I needed some form of safety.
So once you got in, you were pretty active. One of the questions that came in to us is, how does gang culture continue to be prevalent? Like, how do young people, we see what happens, there's 2 choices, or it typically ends one or 2 ways, death or in prison.
Right.
How does it continue to go on? What's the attraction for people?
Connection. One of the common elements that I saw throughout the documentary is the need for connection, the need to belong to something. And I think that's why we drive mentoring so hard, because that something about mentoring seems to come out of this constantly, and it's one of the things that is promoted at the end of it. Steve and I both are part of, and have been part of, a summer school that we do on behalf of the school district. And when we specifically designed for these students, and we do a pre and post survey. In the pre-survey, 70% of the students say that they do not have a significant relationship with an adult that they could talk to about the issues that they're facing. After 5 weeks with our group, it's that same number, but the reverse. They connected with someone that they could talk to about the issues, because there were people there that came from the same background that they did, but they're now on the other side of it.
Can you let me, I just want to ask you, because I think some people don't understand the difference between gang banging and being a gang member. As that, or if the 2 could even coexist. Some people just think gang member, gang bang.
You always have the affiliation, maybe some of the brothers who are from the neighborhood, but maybe not be as active. Then you got the brothers who are with whatever activity is at hand. So I think that kind of what probably makes that separation, but at any point in time, I think a gang member can be a gang banger. So I don't know, I think they might be interchangeable.
Yeah.
Okay, let me check in. You're watching the Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. My guest today is Steve Sneed, who is a filmmaker, documentary maker, as well as Eric Johnson, who works in the space of mentoring. He's a former youth pastor, works with our school children in the counseling space as well. And we're exploring solutions to reduce gang violence here in the city of Pasadena. Steve, like I said, we talked a little bit earlier. You created a lifestyle brand.
Yeah.
You know, similar to, and we'll talk about Nipsey Hussle in our next segment. But you created a lifestyle brand, Made in Dina.
Yeah.
And you wrote that it was a way for you to fund your dreams, to fund this film.
Yeah.
You know, what has it meant to you? Like, you're out there and out and about, and you see people wearing that Made in Dina brand.
You know, I'm gonna go back. I gotta give my brother proper. The original creator is Jason Harden, but
Yes.
that's my brother. So any business venture he has, we usually partner, just like he's the co-producer on this film. So our brand, I'm gonna say, it's phenomenal, man. Like when you quoted me as far as like this, the shirts. In the conception of the film, we knew what we were going to do, but we also knew that funding was probably going to be limited. We started a GoFundMe campaign. I thank everybody who contributed to that. We raised a couple of grand. But to be honest, the grind is what did it for us, man. Us selling the shirts became the currency to fund what we wanted to do. It became the currency to get things done. It became the funding to help pay for some of these venues to have these screenings. It became...
Because you guys, each screening has been free, right?
Every screening has been... We hustled so everyone could come for free. And we did some very nice locations. And
I mean, the first one was at Limley Theater.
Limley Theater.
What was it like seeing both of y'all? I mean, because Eric is featured in the film as well. I mean, what was it like seeing yourself on the big screen?
It's a surreal moment, man, because you think about stuff like that, and you just think about these moments to share with your brothers, that just like the completion of something that's powerful and impactful, and you're just on edge hoping that everybody receives it well. I felt from the heart, I made this with great intentions, and we really want to make a difference. I didn't become a filmmaker to make films necessarily. I made this film to make a difference. So to see that on the screen, to see my brothers all come out and support you brothers, I mean, it's phenomenal. How often do you get to see your brothers on the big screen?
That was pretty awesome, man.
You know what I mean? I loved it. It was a great thing.
But
you said, how does you feel when you see other brothers wearing
it? Yes.
Man, it's dope because, some people want to just support because they just see you out there, but then some people actually really like it. So when you see people really wanting to support you and they're rocking your sweaters and shirts with confidence, man, you just got to appreciate that. You got to be thankful for that.
I mean, because when we think about like the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Eric, and you see brothers who, are in some situations. Steve, you kind of stayed out the way and didn't get into that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, it was tough though. It wasn't an easy thing to do.
I don't doubt that it was, you know what I mean? But so when you see brothers like what Jason and Steve have done, Eric, it's kind of like the OG in the room right now. How does that make you feel, to see these guys, I mean, not asking for a handout, but actually getting a hand out there and getting it done? Because I mean, y'all out there at stores everywhere, right? Getting the product off.
Oh man, I love it. I can't say enough how much I love it. Steve is a man that is just passionate about making a difference with our young people, and I love how you and Jason, it's been by any means necessary, and then when you needed some additional help, then you called on your fam and everybody to say, hey man, can you kick in some additional money? And I don't think the support would have been what it was if you weren't who you were. And that's the way that you have been in this community. Right. You've always been that person.
I mean, because I got to share a story. I mean, you were sponsoring an event, right? Yeah. And you were giving away shirts.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I felt compelled to still pay you for it.
Yes.
You just to support. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of edification and support of one another. It goes a long ways, because when you see somebody out there hustling, you see somebody out there working, you see somebody helping themselves.
Right.
And this is really that lesson for those in the audience that you may know somebody. If you are willing to help yourself, others will be more inclined to join in and see that you're not just
begging, asking,
and asking and whatever. Let me check in real quick, because I really want to spend some more time really on this next segment. You're watching the Conversation Live. The Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. My guest today is Steve Sneed, as well as Eric Johnson, and we're talking about gang violence. We've talked a little bit about how Steve and his partner Jason Harden have really hustled their way into producing a feature documentary, screening it around town, all for free. And I want to talk about this next situation. In the news this past Sunday, we heard about the artist, the entrepreneur, the activist, Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey was gunned down in front of his store. And, you know, Steve, you talked about his business model being an example of how you guys were kind of rolling out Made in Dina. So I want to take a look for context, roll in this clip, and then we'll come back and we'll pick up the conversation.
Late this afternoon near Los Angeles, police arrested the man they believe murdered rapper Nipsey Hussle. The suspect's name is Eric Holder. He is 29 years old. He was captured in Bellflower, about 20 miles away from the shooting scene. Here's Jamie Yukas.
Police say this is the man who killed Nipsey Hussle and wounded 2 others. 29-year-old Eric Holder had words with Nipsey in front of the rapper's Marathon clothing store. He left, and as this video seems to show, came back with a handgun.
We believe this to be a dispute between Mr. Hussle and Mr. Holder.
Over what?
I'm not going to go into the conversations, but it appears to be a personal matter.
A vigil last night drew hundreds. 19 were hurt after someone spotted a gun, causing a stampede. The father of 2 recently spoke about growing up in violence.
I grew up in LA in the 90s, you know what I mean? It was intense. Gang culture was what was going on.
He worked hard to change that, opening a tech workspace and helping get kids $10,000 worth of sneakers. His mission, to make his community better.
Police say a member of the public actually tipped them off as to Eric Holder's whereabouts. That's how they were able to find him. He's now being booked on murder charges and is being held without bail. Jeff?
Jamie Yukas, thank you very much.
Eric, how does a bruised ego turn into a homicide?
You know, one of the things that I struggle with our community is, especially when it comes to men in our community, is the inability to lay down our egos. When we sit down and have discussions, one of the things that constantly comes up is that as men, we don't talk. As black men, we don't talk. We don't talk about what we're dealing with. We hide that from each other. We hide it from our families. I'm dealing with some of those issues right now with my own father. So, with all that inside, and just knowing my father's own volcanic temper, with a badge and a gun, all it takes is the wrong statement, the misunderstanding, and it goes from 0 to 60 in a moment.
I mean, because for over 40 years, you've worked with youth and,
Right.
and people dealing with trauma.
Right.
And shout out to Brother K-Ron, who has Crack Generation, you know, and he deals a lot with informed trauma. His book is out. Is it trauma that shows up as ego? Is it misdirected anger? I mean, I get the explosiveness of it, but
Right.
you know, if there was a moment of where Mr. Gardner had just paused, used some emotional intelligence.
Right.
I mean, I'm trying to understand it through the lens of a 29-year-old who gets their feelings hurt and then goes and picks up a gun. And at what point does discernment kick in?
In our community, we don't have a history of processing what we're facing. So I don't know when, if that is not the pattern, if that's not what we're walking students through, which is what we're doing now, is walking students through this so that they can, they know how to process pain, that they know how to de-escalate their anger, how they can just stop, take a breath, and also build a relationship with someone that they can talk to immediately before they go out and do something stupid. If we're not practicing that, and I speak to those who are older than teenagers, especially to men, especially to fathers, especially to the older people in our community. If we don't model that, then the first example is going to be, I don't like what I just heard, I'm going to do something about it.
Steve, you work with young children.
Yes, sir.
As an intervention specialist.
Yes, sir.
And you know, Monday morning or Tuesday morning when kids return to school, I mean, was this something that they were talking about? Nipsey Hussle, or what?
School
Did
was-
you have conversations with the kids?
School was out Monday, so I didn't get a chance to and then I was at a training on Tuesday. So my first day back on campus was today, and I'm at an elementary school now, so I don't know if they is connected to these type of social issues. So I didn't really get a chance to talk to the necessarily the youth, but I did talk to some staff, and one of our office managers, she knows the culture and really looks inspired by Nipsey Hussle and what he stood for. And the conversation is the kind of the conversation I've been having with a bunch of people, man. It's just sad to see someone go when they're trying to do so much. I know the first thing a lot of people may say is, but he's affiliated with this or he's affiliated with that. Although that was true, this is still a brother who was proud of where he come from, but turned the leaf or turned the corner to try to right his wrongs, to get to a place to do a bunch of positive things, buying out the block, employing people. He's finally reached the height of his career as far as music is getting to the mainstream. He's been underground all these years. So all these things are aligning for him, and he's doing great things in his community. And I look at him because literally the night before, me and Jason was watching videos on Nipsey because I was talking like, man, I wonder how he pulled off the Puma deal. We was talking about going down to a store, see how he got his store laid out. Man, like we were inspired. I produce and make music. He's an artist. We turned the corner to try to put together clothing. He's doing that. So we're looking at this brother like we got a great example of a brother doing all the right things. And then you hear about him getting gunned down in front of the establishment. It's just kind of like,
Because when I tapped into him, I immediately thought about you guys.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? In terms
me
of
too.
how you move and
That's what I'm
you're
saying,
doing. I mean,
right?
the whole table, literally how y'all
Yeah.
starting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And then Jason posted something the other day that just it made me sick to my stomach. Jason had wrote something to the effect that if selling T-shirts and just trying to help my community gets me gunned down, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like that's all at this point.
Right.
But some would say karma. You can't necessarily get away from.
The thing is, we don't know what happened with that brother and Nipsey. We don't know what led to what and who said what and who did what. We just know the end result is terrible. I felt like I lost one of my brothers. I don't know Nipsey at all. Never met the brother, but it's just like when you see somebody you look up to that has been making the moves you want to make and is being successful, you kind of just take it as a model, and even if it's not a role model, a business model, and you just kind of look at it like, man, I like what this brother's doing, and I'm a positive brother. I always try to do positive things, so it affected me just for the simple fact that it's like, wow, this brother's gone. Just like this, we were watching his videos yesterday. We were excited about some of his products, looking at some of the revolutionary things that he's doing with his products, his business, his music, and boom, he's gone. We get the call. I think I was about to do a shoot, and then I got the call right before I was shooting, so I was like disturbed the whole day, man. I felt like I lost one of my brothers, and I don't even know this man.
Eric, that HIV thing we talked about earlier, not human immune deficiency virus. We're talking about hood infected virus. Right. This pathology. Can we break this cycle? Is there a solution, and what are some of the things that you're doing in your work?
There is a solution. I'm always going to quote our former health director, Dr. Eric Walsh. He was prolific in the work that he was doing throughout the city, holistically making a difference. And one of the things that in working with anyone, whether it was law enforcement, sheriffs, clergy, he went back to a study that was done by the public health director in San Francisco that to treat violence like you would a contagious disease. And with those steps, one part of it was making sure that individuals from the community knew how to engage individuals, calm the situation down, people who already had respect and trust within the community. Then the second part of it is that anyone who had been affected by the violent situation, that they were also given counsel or directed to crisis services or whatever it was. And then the third part of it was providing alternative activities. And as a result, it would cause neighborhoods to be neighborhoods again instead of battlegrounds. And they took this whole study to Chicago. and was bringing forth tremendous results. But it was criticized because it was all about engaging individuals instead of locking them away in prison. And so, and he was saying that just like with infectious diseases in the past, they would just gather up people and then contain them in a room rather than engage them. And this is what we do by just taking anyone that we think is a problem and throwing them into prison instead of engaging them as people. We hear that in the film from Tyrone, is that these are people.
These are people
These
first.
are people. And if we treat people as people and treat them with dignity, they can change a community. The whole thing behind a positive force was seeing these individuals walk away from being shot callers and being positive role models in the community. And it was a beautiful thing.
I think so.
So there is a redemption value
Yeah.
in terms people can be redeemed. Steve, you want to add to that?
You know what, man? I think, you know, the common theme emerged in the course of making the film, and that was having positive things to do, positive role models, and lack of supervision. Like, those things kind of create this opening to let some of those negative influences in. So the film is connected to mentorship. You know, at the end of the film, I try to give some resources out for people, because people always ask me questions about how do I get involved, what should I do, how can I participate? And everyone that comes to a screening, we give a flyer with resources, so you could pick a resource to go become a mentor, spend a few minutes with these young brothers. Like, you know, they really want to listen to somebody. When you start chopping it up with the young brothers, at first they might clown a little bit to see how willing you are to engage. Once you dive in and they see that you're willing to talk to them, they open up, man, they talk. And they got real stuff to say. And I think mentorship is just a positive thing. And also what the film has been doing is collaborations are happening. People come to the screenings and they're like, man, who's this brother Eric? I need to talk to him. And then who is this brother? I need to talk to them. So now we got community. We got the community.
That's probably where we first connected.
We got the community collaborating on a project, and I think this is huge, and I think it's going to be a good tool. Hope people receive it well. I feel really good about it, and I know you're going to get back to me. I'll plug it for the whole date and things, but I'll go ahead and let you do your
Plug
thing.
that date right now. We
You know
30
what?
seconds, we got to get out of here.
April 11th, next Thursday, 5:30 to 6:15 is going to be a reception with food, and from 6:30 on is going to be the Film and Forum. Don't miss it. It is free to everybody. We welcome you guys to come out. It's at a great location. I really give PCC props for allowing me to do this, and my brothers and sisters over there. So I thank you guys. Please come out and feel free to enjoy yourself and be a part of the community and meet folks and talk to me if you need to, and let's chop it up and make a positive event.
All right, we got to get out of here. Eric, Steve, thank you so much for joining me today again. You're watching the Conversation Live. Conversation Live focuses on social justice, restorative justice, inclusion, and equality. Till we have another opportunity to speak with you, as always, agape.
My brother.
The Conversation Live is brought to you by